Hey guys, and welcome to another one of my videos. So, I decided I'd start doing devlogs on this channel. This video kind of serves as a test or guinea pig video to figure out the best way to do it. I've already ran into things with how I'm approaching this, which I don't really like. Mainly being, I recorded the whole development cycle in one video, and then I decided I would do the voiceover after the fact, which I'm doing right now. I don't really like that because I'm realizing it's a little bit hard to properly articulate what's going on in the video after I've already edited it, and then I'm recording the audio after the fact. So I think in the future I'm going to record the audio about what I'm doing as I'm making the video and sort of start recording and stop recording as needed whenever I want to show what I'm doing. So I apologize if this video is a little coherent or I kind of stumble through it a little bit, because I'm talking over a video that I've already edited together, which I don't think, like I said, is the best way to do it. So I apologize if it's a little strange, but I'll be fixing that in the future, and the future one should be a little bit more comprehensive or understandable. But anyways, in the background here, you can see this is the game I've been working on. I've been working on this for a few months, but I haven't had a lot of time recently. Now I have some more free time, which is why I wanted to start this up, and I wanted to try my hand at devlogs because I think it's something that a lot of people find interesting, even if they're not necessarily programmers. There's still value in it because it kind of just explains the general process of how to do something. I think it's pretty interesting, and I'm going to talk about how I use Unreal Engine, Rider, which is my IDE. I also use Claude for helping me develop as well, and I kind of want to talk about that as well because I think it's kind of interesting, the whole AI thing. And how I use it personally. So this game is a lot like Fallout Shelter, or not Fallout Shelter, Fallout, what's that game called? Yeah, Fallout Shelter, yeah. So you can move these units in this space station, and you can build rooms, and you put units in rooms to create like energy for the station, or water or oxygen, and then there's enemies, and you can go out exploring to find new planets and stuff like that. So I'll kind of explain it in the devlogs as it goes along. But for this video today, the feature I'm trying to implement is making it so the units, when you tell them to move to a room, it will allow them to move to the room even if the room is full. So rooms have stations in them, and the bigger the room is, the more stations it has. And right now, if you try to move a unit to a room, which I'll demonstrate in a second, and the room is full, it just doesn't allow you to do it. And so what I want to change it to do is, if I try to do that, it will actually swap out one of the units in the room with the unit that I told it to move there. So I think right about here, you can see I saved the game, just so it's easy to come back to later. So I select this bottom unit, try to move it to the top. It's not even highlighting, it's not letting me do it because you can see there's 2 units in each room, and that's the maximum for this unit size. And then actually what happens right here, which happens quite a lot when I'm developing, is I discover a bug. So it hits this little ensure here, and basically what's happening is when those units go out into space and come back inside, which is what happens if a room gets upgraded when they're inside of it, it's trying to assign multiple units to the same station node, which again are those nodes inside of the room. And this is a bug, so I kind of go on a little side quest here, and I look through the code. I don't show that in the video, but I look through the code and figure out what the issue is. And I just tell Claude, which is the AI thing, which function to fix and exactly how to fix it. And this is what I use AI for mostly. I don't just kind of blindly tell it to do something. I'll figure out the problem, I'll figure out how I want to fix it, and I'll figure out exactly where it should be fixed. And then I'll just tell Claude to do it and then double check its code afterwards. And it really just saves me the time of having to type out the code myself, which is kind of nice. So here I retested it, I upgraded that room. Those units kind of go out into space and then they enter back in, and I don't get that ensure message anymore, so that fixes the bug. So now I'm going to move on to actually fixing or implementing the feature that I want to implement, which again is the swapping thing. So when I move a unit to a room, it'll swap it out. So I'm just kind of building some rooms to set up the testing environment right now. So you can see I click on that unit on the right. I'm trying to click on this room on the left and vice versa, and it's not swapping. So right here, I think I just saved the game again. Yeah, I saved the game, and then now I start implementing it. So I thought about this for a long time. I cut it out of the video because it's just me sitting there thinking. But I basically come up with a plan and ask Claude to do it. So what I tell it is that I'd like it to make it so that the player can still tell a crew unit, which are the units that make up the station that you can actually control, When I tell a unit to move to a room, even if the room's station nodes are full, to basically allow the player to still go there, and I tell it which functions I want it to modify, and how I want the swapping to work, and what the rules should be. And you can see right here, it's just thinking, so usually it takes about, I don't know, sometimes it can take like 5 minutes to fully come up with a plan of how to do something. It kind of depends on how much detail you tell it. And I also ask it, like, what do you think about this plan? Because sometimes it will figure out something that I might have missed, or sometimes it will make a suggestion. And sometimes it's right, sometimes it's wrong. It's sort of just like having two programmers on the same problem at once. And I always ask it to ask me any questions, because I don't really like it when it makes assumptions, and sometimes it will if you don't prompt it to ask you questions. So this process takes a little while. Like I said, I spend most of my time just sitting there kind of staring at the screen, a blank screen, thinking about how I want to do it and looking through the code. And then once I have a plan, I tell Claude how to do that plan. I don't really just blindly ask Claude to program something, because usually that doesn't work out too well. So it's asking me a few questions. What it's asking me right now is about a concept in my game, which is the primary room. So all units have a primary room, or a priority room rather. And the priority room is the room that they should prioritize when they're not really sure what they should do. So after they come out of combat, for example, if you had previously told them to go to the solar power plant room, then they'll remember that after they get out of combat, they'll go back there. And it's just asking me, how does that fit into this? And I'm just explaining how I want it to fit into it. Again, when I do devlogs in the future, I'm going to record them as I'm developing instead of doing a voiceover like I'm doing right now, so that I have more time to sort of explain these things. It's a bit difficult when the video speed is kind of already set, and now I'm recording it after the fact, if that makes sense. So I apologize if people want more detail. I'll be doing that in the future. I think it will make them a lot more interesting, the videos. But like I said, this is sort of a trial video to kind of get my foot in the door with devlogs and sort of figure out the best way to do it, including software and all that stuff as well. Because I haven't done videos in a while, so I'm trying to sort of get back into it. But anyways, it comes up with a plan of what it wants to do. It hasn't actually coded anything yet, and I usually read like the first half of this, because the first half of it is basically it just reading back to you what you already told it and explaining what it's going to do, sort of in plain English. And then the bottom half of it is more like the technical, which files it's going to change, which functions it's going to change, which variables it's going to create. I don't typically read that, because I sort of just, as long as the top part sounds good and I'm sure that the AI understands exactly what I'm doing, I just let it do its thing, and then I look at the code afterwards in some sort of view where I can diff it with my existing code. And I can also look at the code in the actual IDE itself, and it's a lot easier than trying to figure out what it's going to do by reading the variables it says it's going to create. So here it's actually adding the code. It kind of gives you a little preview. So the green lines are the code it's added, the red lines are the code it's removing. And when I did this, it did it mostly right. But oftentimes with the AI, it will overcomplicate things. So after I reviewed the code, I basically told it one area where I think it could simplify. It made a function when it really could have just slightly modified another function and be able to accomplish the same thing. So I wrote that out, and you can see it's removing all these red lines are a good sign, because that means it's removing code that it just added. Just in order to simplify it. And this is something that's really important if you're working with some sort of AI code, is that if you don't understand what you're doing and you just let the code do what it wants to do, or that the AI do what it wants to do, it's going to overbloat your code and overcomplicate your code. Pretty much every time it codes something, I have to look at it, and there's usually a way I can simplify it. Sometimes it does a good job, sometimes it doesn't, but usually you have to look at it and tell it specifically how you want it to simplify it. In this case, just reusing an existing function instead of trying to create a new one that's 90% the same. So here I'm just running it to test it. You can see when you rerun it and load a save file, it kind of simulates as if time has passed in the background, which is why all these things are available for me to click. But you can see now when I click on this unit on the left and then I click on the room on the right, they swap positions, which is what I wanted it to do. So I'm just doing a little bit of testing. You can see these little energy and water symbols pop up, which is when units are in rooms, they kind of generate these resources for you. So the more units you have in there, the quicker they'll generate. Right now I just have energy, oxygen, and water. And then the top right is the credits, which is kind of like your money. But anyways, I'm just testing. And I think I find a Now I find what I think is a bug right here, where if I click on this unit and tell it to go to the room it's already in, it swaps locations with a unit that's already in there. And you can see I start telling Claude to fix this because I know it's just like a one-line if check, but then I sort of rethink it and realize that maybe players might want to do that. So I wasn't 100% sure if it's worth fixing, and usually if I'm not sure if something's worth fixing, I just leave it, especially if it's something simple, because the last thing I want to do is just add code that isn't really needed. And so I just decided to skip that and let it be in there, and maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, it's hard to say. And then I test one more thing here, which is you can see if I try to move a unit into a room that actually does have available space, it's still swapping units, which isn't correct. So you can see when I move this right guy into the left room, it should just move him over there. It shouldn't swap him with the guy that's in there because there's already space available for him. So I debug through the code. Again, I don't show this, but I debug through the code. I show it a little bit and figure out exactly what the problem is, and I figure out exactly how I want it to fix it. And then once I figure that out, I type it out to Claude and let him do the actual coding himself. And that's pretty much my workflow. I very, very rarely will just blindly tell him to fix something and hope for the best, because usually he doesn't do a great job from what I found. But I won't go into the technical details just because the way I've recorded this. But I go through a couple different iterations. The main problem being that the system doesn't really know if it should look for stations inside of a room that are actually available or not. And so I'm having it add an enum, and it did something quite strange the first time. And I asked it, why are you doing it this way? And it actually came back and it was actually correct the way it was doing it. But the solution it was proposing was not great. So I told it to kind of refactor that a little bit. Again, the future devlogs, I'll go more into the technical details, but it's sort of this back and forth with the AI. It definitely saves time in the long run. I know maybe it sounds like it doesn't because you're kind of going back and forth, but it saves a lot of time because you're not doing the actual coding yourself. You're really sort of managing the code, which is very important, and you have to kind of know what you're doing to be able to do that. But we kind of went back and forth a couple times on this, and I eventually I understood what it was talking about and why it didn't want to do it the first way, and I eventually suggested an alternative method which solves the problem that I wanted and solves the problem that it brought up. And the solution we basically came up with is that this function that finds whether or not, or it finds the node that the unit should move to in the room, it basically has an enum value now that it can be passed in, and that allows you to control whether or not you want it to return only nodes that are, completely empty in the sense that there's no units there, or it can return any node even if there's no units there, or it can prefer to return the node that is empty, but if it can't find an empty one, it will return one that already has one on it. And then I use that throughout the code accordingly, depending on what exactly I'm trying to do. So I think now I'm just retesting again, now that I've already reviewed the code. Again, I'm not showing the recordings, or I'm not showing the all the work I do behind the scenes. I probably will more in the future, but you can see I'm retesting this scenario right now. So when I click the right unit and move it to the left room, now it just moves in there. It doesn't try to do the swap, which is quite nice, which is what I wanted. And then I'm just doing a little bit of further testing here with different kind of weird scenarios. I think it all worked pretty well after this. I like to do a lot of testing just to be sure that there's no weird edge cases. It's best to find any bugs as soon as you do the feature, because it's fresh in your head, and it's kind of fresh in the AI's head too, if that makes sense. Usually if you have to come back to something with the AI, it has to refresh itself on what you're talking about. So it's good to do a lot of testing, and that's typically what I'll do. But anyway, so that pretty much wraps up this devlog. This is sort of me just testing with this feature, and I got it working. I tried to keep the scope of this video kind of small because I knew it was my first one. I was probably gonna make mistakes, which I definitely did with how I structured it. So future ones will hopefully be better. And let me know what you guys think, if there's anything you want me to improve. And yeah, thanks for watching.